let's take a look at this. It's been a minute. Let's see. That's off, that's off, that's off, that's on. That appears to be live. All right, let's get into it. Hello, Shadowcat back with more Babylon 5. I'm excited to get into this one because we're about to finish up with starships. We've been doing starships for a long time now. And I think that everyone else is probably tired of it. I could keep doing this, though. I could keep doing this for a lot longer. And fortunately for me, I get to keep doing this for a lot longer because I still have to do Vorlon ships and Shadow ships, but you don't get to see those. Those are mine. But don't worry, I have good stuff for you today. We're going to finish up with flying saucers, and then we get to move into other fun stuff. So, of course, we'll go back over what we did last time, just a little bit of a recap. And before I get started, if you're here and you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do that now. Hit the bell icon, so that way you get notified every time these videos come out. I try to do the stream at the same time every week, but, you know, sometimes things happen. Like Easter. It's okay, though. If you know somebody else who's also into Babylon 5 or Starfinder, go ahead and share this video with them. Otherwise, if you like what I'm doing, go ahead and just leave a like on this video. You can leave comments down below, but if you're going to leave a comment down below, might I suggest, in fact, might I ask that you join our Discord? We have one. It's linked below. I'd like you to come and join that because I'd like you to come play with us. And if you want to play with us, you got to come play with us there. We already have a Star Trek game going, which has been a lot of fun so far. If you want to ask, JP is in the chat right now. He's in the game. And you can ask him all about it. He'll tell you all about it. Because he knows probably more than I do about Star Trek, and he can tell you literally everything. So, if you want to come play Star Trek, you can join us and do that. We're also setting up a Warhammer 40,000 Gene Stealer campaign. And so that hasn't started yet, which means there is still time to get into Game 0 on that one. If you'd like to play with Gene Stealers, come play with us. And of course, naturally, if you want to come and play Babylon 5 as well, that's the place to do it. So, I hope to see you inside of the Discord. And until then, I suppose, we'll just get started with this because we got to finish this module before we can play it. And yes, looking at the chat, JP is here. JP says, come play with us. Forever and ever. Couldn't resist. Alright, so let me go ahead and start bringing everything in. We'll go over what we did last time. Because we actually did a fair amount last time, and it was really, really interesting. So, of course, we're going to need our browser. And we're going to need to have the spreadsheet that we're working on. And we'll take a look at what we did last time. Now, we started in the League of Non-Aligned Worlds vessels. And there's not a whole lot to do. There are many people in the League of Non-Aligned Worlds, but most of them were never developed. Now, just as a point of interest, they were never canonically developed. One of the fun things that I could do is that I could actually work on building ships for each one of them. I'm not going to. I'm not going to do that here. But I could develop profiles for each one of those races, and we could create doctrines and build like entire fleets for them. They'd probably be lesser fleets because they are the League of Non-Aligned Worlds. Their vessels probably only include 1 or 2 different types of ships, but we could sit down and determine what are they, what do they do, how do they act, and we could build our own profiles. That's a project for later. Okay, we're not doing that right now. That's just a possibility. For right now, we're just doing what we have canonically available, and we only have like a handful of ships available. Literally, it's 5. The first, of course, being the Brachiaries Avioki. And let me pull up a picture of that one just so we know what we're talking about. I don't want this one. I want here. So, League of Non-Aligned Worlds, the Brakiri Cruiser. So, there you go. That's the Brakiri Aviyoki. So, looking at it, they call it a cruiser, I made it a cruiser. I think it works good as a cruiser. And honestly, they talked about how this cruiser was incredibly poorly armed for what it was. And my stats do not really reflect that, to be honest. I see Blizz is here. Hello, Blizz. Good to see you. Glad to have you here. Anyway, we built a cruiser for the Brakiri, and we built it by the rules. Which is that we gave it particle beams, we gave it some missiles, and it's even got pulse cannons on it. Honestly, the yellow are available slots that could be filled in. The green is what comes by default. And even by default, this is a pretty solid vessel. The long-range capital beams, they're good. I mean, that is a ship that is an actual threat to something. It's not as well armed as some other vessels, but it's good. And so I really have a hard time looking at this and saying that it's kind of so-so. It's good. I like it. So we did the Aviyoki, then we moved on to the Drazi, and the Drazi have 2 ships, and their ships are fascinating. So the Drazi have a very offensive doctrine when it comes to their ships. But their technology doesn't really keep up. So they have 2. They have an interceptor called the Sky Serpent, and then they have a destroyer called the Sunhawk. Going over the interceptor, there's really nothing special about it except for one thing. When we looked at all the other interceptors, the Star Fury has pulse cannons and a grappler. The Minbari has forward beams and a tractor beam. The Narn and Centauri ships have missiles. The Drazi ship doesn't. However, it does still have 2 forward weapons on it. So I opted for something different and gave it linked pulse cannons. This is going to make them incredibly dangerous within short range. Because, I mean, that's a lot of damage to be throwing. That actually outpaces even what the Minbari can do. The only difference is that the Minbari can do it from medium range, and they could potentially blow whatever or whoever is flying the ship apart before they even got to use their cannons. It's the one thing that makes them kind of special. And JP says, what, 1 green and 1 purple? I mean, we haven't drawn scarves yet to see who's flying this ship or not. We'll have to wait and see. So yeah, there's nothing much to say about the Sky Serpent. It's a decent interceptor for what it is. Nothing special. The Sunhawk, however, now that one's interesting. So when we went for the Sunhawk, we knew that it's not a terribly big ship, so destroyer frames seemed to be the best way to go. That's what we did. It's a little on the slower side. It'll keep pace with pretty much everybody else, but it's not tremendously fast. There are other ships that can easily outflank it. As far as its hit points, its armor, and everything goes, again, nothing special. It's a decently strong ship, but it's nothing special. So let's get into the armaments, because that's where the doctrine for this ship really shows up. And when looking at it, the Sunhawk has a very clear profile. If we back up here and go to the Sunhawk, we have a nice picture of one here. It is nothing but a boat with cannons, and all of them are pointed forward. This is not unlike another ship that we built, and that was the White Star, the only difference being that the White Star is actually a lot smaller. So, we kind of built it with that in mind. The Drazi Sunhawk has 3 forward weapons. One is a long range, one is a medium range, one is a short range. Pretty much identical to what the White Star was doing, with one exception. The White Star has a capital weapon, the Drazi Sunhawk does not. But it does still have that full coverage at all ranges. And so the closer it gets, the meaner it gets. We also gave it, missiles that it can dump off the sides. And so this thing has it's a complete attack profile. This thing is going in there to do a job, and that's it. Also fascinating is that it does not have a hangar on it. It's not big enough for one. But it does have a single fighter, which, according to the lore, according to the wiki, is berthed on top of it. There's an airlock that connects them, and somebody simply crawls into it, probably the purple guy, and they simply detach it, and they have a single fighter to go and help out. We were able to replicate that with a launch tube. And so there's one launch tube that this thing has. It can launch one Sky Serpent, and it has a friend. That's great. So the Sunhawk came out really, really well. I like it. It is super good. And so now we're moving on to the last of the two races, and that would be the Vree. The Vree have two ships. They have a Zil and a Zor, I believe it is. Hold on. Yeah, Zil and Zor. And I don't remember which one is which. One of them is small, one of them is big, even though they both list them as cruisers. We'll have to figure it out. So let me just go ahead and figure out which one was the smaller one. Is it the Zor? This one is 350 meters across. And JP's very excited. JP's been waiting for this one for a long time. Okay, the Zil is 500 meters across. So yeah, we're going to start with the Zor. Which means we're going to start with this one. Here we go. So there's pretty much the best picture we're going to get of it. What does it say about the Zor? Well, actually, let me go ahead and get this started first. So, species. Is going to be Vree. The name is going to be the Zor. And we'll get whatever information we can from this thing. So let's take a read. So the Vree Saucer was a class of Vree warship. They don't even name it here. It says a pair of these were among the first to visit Babylon 5 during the Deathwalker incident. This was the smaller and less powerful design of the Zil-class saucer. The ship was configured for non-atmospheric flight only. Now that's interesting. Non-atmospheric only. We're going to have to make a note of that because the Area 50 lends me to believe that this is going to be a large ship, and technically a large ship should be able to land on a planet. This one explicitly cannot. Then we have some behind-the-scenes stuff, but that's all it tells us. So let's check the datasheet then. This one says, one of the first Vree saucers to visit Babylon 5, the small saucer is approximately 100 meters in diameter. Okay. We need to have a talk here. I wonder, is this cut off? Yeah, okay, that's actually cut off on my screen. Here, let me move this a little bit. Okay, let me just move this a little bit. Thank you. Hold on, just down a little bit. Right here. Length, 350. I'm going to assume that's meters. Okay? But right here, this small saucer is approximately 100 meters in diameter. So which is it? Is it 100 meters in diameter or is it 350? Stop contradicting yourself. We've been here for 15 minutes. Okay, I'm going to go with the 350 for right now, just because I don't know what else to do at the moment. So it is armed with 6 pulsed ion cannon type weapons. And Blizz is laughing at me. JP says 100 meters and 350 feet. You know, the thought did occur to me. Can somebody do a conversion on that and tell me that find out if 100 meters is actually close to 350 feet? If it is, I may be willing to accept that. The only problem is that I'm pretty sure that every other ship was measured in meters. Let me just back up here. Let's take a look at the Avioki. Yep, the Avioki was measured in meters. It is 1,000 meters long. Okay. And the Sunhawk, just, because it's convenient. It is 350 meters long. JP says 328 feet. Okay, fine. But that would make the Zor Cruiser the only one to be measured in feet. I can't. I can't sometimes. I'm already losing my mind. Okay, getting back to the Zor. Okay, it is armed with 6 pulsed ion cannon type weapons. Now, looking at the picture, and again, it's cut off, so you can't really see it. I don't know how to better set up my pages. Let me ask you this. Do you think this would work better if I did side by side instead of top and bottom? Which do you think would work better? Because I can try that next week. Do you think that we should be doing side by side or top and bottom? I mean, most of the things that I'm working on are like vertical columns anyway. Side by side might work better. Let me know what you think. And JP says, if the small one is 300 meters, how big is the big saucer? 500. We already saw that. It is 500. And I'll even go back and look at that real quick. Zil class. And by the way, they actually listed on here 500 meters. It's cut off on my screen, but 500 meters. And by the way, this one actually says this is the standard Vree starship measuring some 500 meters in diameter. At least this one is consistent. So, I'm going to go with the 350. Now, interestingly enough, the Sunhawk over here says that it is 350 meters as well, which means that we can technically use the Sunhawk as a measuring stick, because if the Sunhawk is a large destroyer, then technically speaking, the Zor saucer should also be one, or at least similar. We'll look at what we've got in large frames and see what we can do about that, because it doesn't appear to be any kind of like serious warship. We'll have to kind of wait and see. So anyway, 6 pulsed ion type weapons, although it looks like it's got turrets on the top, and it's got these 6 weapons mounted in 2 turrets, or at least 2 arms. Kind of hard to see, but it's there. It says this version of the Vree saucer is not as advanced as the newer Mark II Zil class saucer. The Mark I model appears to be some form of escort ship using matter-antimatter reactor systems and a gravitic drive. Okay. Well, like I said, at 350, that's going to make it large. The problem is that when I look at what we did before, the Brakiri Avioki is huge, and the Sunhawk is large. Now, huge has been roughly 1,000 meters for us the entire time I've been doing ships. So everything from like 500 to 1,000 has been a huge cruiser. That means that pretty much everything 250 to 500 should be a large ship, which puts the destroyer like right there in the right area. That would put the if I made the Zill saucer a cruiser, that would put it at like the very bottom edge of what a cruiser could be, with the Avioki being at the very top edge of what a cruiser should be. Which I'm actually okay with. I think that works kind of elegantly. Alright, let's run with it that way. Does this list a crew? It says that as a crew of 20. And I can work with that. So crew of 20. Passengers, does it list any? It says troops, no. So none of those. Size, we're going to make this large. However, as far as the frame goes, let's take a look at what we have in options and see what best suits us. It doesn't necessarily have to be a destroyer. So let's see, large. And JP says, yay, minions. I have no idea where you got minions from, but no. Just no. Okay, large. I've got, let's see, the Oma is medium, so we're going to start with a tanker. Tankers, not very maneuverable. 100 hit points. Well, hull points. It's got turrets. Turrets are nice. I'm going to want turrets for this thing, honestly. Destroyer, heavy freighter, heavy hauler. So, and then we got the Vermelith. After that, we get into the huge ones. So let's take a look at what we got. It does not necessarily make sense for it to be a tanker. Okay, it's not a tanker ship. It's not even... It says it's an escort. It's not a freighter, not a hauler. If it's an escort, I suppose destroyer does kind of make the most sense. Yeah, what am I doing? Why am I even arguing with this? It's a destroyer. It's a military ship. And JP says, wait, are we starting as minions and crew? Okay, taking a bit of a pause here. I know, we're like 24 minutes in and first rabbit hole. The answer to that is I have no idea. So, much like when we started the Star Trek campaign, before we do anything with the Babylon 5 module, we first have to sit down and discuss what you want to do. See, this also goes back to how there are various different kinds of GMs out there. Some GMs will sit down and they will write out the entire story, the entire campaign, and then they'll hand it to you and say, this is the game that we're playing. I personally reject that idea because I think that is unfair to my players. Why should I force you to play something, and why should you have to play something that you didn't necessarily even agree to? My personal approach is to sit down and ask, what story do you want to play? And then I can build a story based on that. It's not that hard to do. So, when you ask if you're going to be the minions or crew, that is entirely up to you. You could be, I could easily, and I would like to, write a story where all of my players are officers on a capital ship. I would love to have my players being chief engineers or chief operations officers or, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Flight leads? Maybe it's flight lead? I'm not sure. Who's the person who leads a squadron? I don't know. I feel like I should know, but I don't know. But I would like, to have players who are going to be ace pilots and they're going to be flight leads for a squadron of fighters. I would love to have a game where my players are like that. Here's the problem with that, though. And this is why I expect my players to push back on it. Doing so is going to make them give up a lot of freedom, especially if they're the same players coming from my Star Trek game, where they have their own ship, and they have total freedom. But this is why I don't force the story on anybody. Because we could start off with players being on a planet. Okay, they could be planet-bound. They could be on Earth, they could be on Mars, they could be on various different planets. I mean, that's if we're playing humans. If we're playing, like, Centauri, we could start on Centauri Prime. We could also start on a space station. That space station could be Babylon 5. In fact, it's a Babylon 5 module. Starting on Babylon 5 would be a really, really good place to start. But that also comes with a bit of, loss of freedom, because then they would have to do things on the station to build up enough money to buy their first ship so that they could get off the station. And I think that there would be a lot of really good story opportunities as my players made their way through the station, made a living, and found or bought their own freedom. Or, got out and salvaged their own freedom, however they wanted to go about it. I try to give my players as much freedom as I can, and that means that whether you start as minions in crew depends on what you choose. So it's up to you. And JP says, yes, flight leader or wing commander. See, I was close. So, it's up to you. What do you want to do? You got time to think about it. We're not doing it right now. Alright, rabbit hole closed. Alright, back to the Zor. So, we're going to make it a destroyer. However, I'm pretty much going to customize this one, I think. So for starters, I can go ahead and copy a lot of this directly from the Sunhawk. It's going to be average with a +0, turn rate of 2. The thrusters are probably going to stay the same. All of this will stay the same. The HP, I don't know about until we actually finish everything up. But it's not going to have shields. It's not going to have armor. Jump engine. Now, see, that's interesting. Oh, and that's something I forgot to mention last time. Glad I looked at this. So last time, I had actually made this a yes because I didn't know for certain whether the Drazi had jump engines or not. I assumed that they did. But I went back and did my research. Okay, I went back and read just everything on the Sunhawk period. As it turns out, the Drazi do not have jump capability. That is not a technology that they have. Their interceptors certainly don't have it, and neither do their capital ships. They are entirely reliant on jump gates, or other ships to make a jump point for them. The Drazi ships are very aggressive, and they are also, all of them, short range. Even their capital ships. So, I had to change that. When we're talking about the Zor, though, I have no idea And this doesn't say anything, so I still don't know. And it's hard for us to really, make a judgment on this one. And JP says, okay, I had a thought, slingers. I feel like I need context on that one. Are you saying that you want slings? I mean, it's a little primitive, but if you want to specialize in slings, I suppose they'd be considered exotic weapons in this setting. You can take a proficiency for that. Anyway, getting back to the Vree saucer. Here's the problem with this. We know that they used a jump gate when they came to Babylon 5. And PC's in here. Hello, PC. Good to see you. We know the Vree saucer used a jump gate when it came to Babylon 5. This is not, however, an indication that they do not have jump capabilities. Even ships that have jump drives will use a jump gate if possible, just to save on the wear and tear of the jump engine. Now that being said, this is one of the reasons why I kind of wish that I would have gone through and evaluated hyperspace and jump capability and everything before we did this, because I may have to go back and adjust some of these. I have no idea. One thing that I could do, though, let me go look at the Zor. Let me look at the Zor. Does it list, or not the Zor, the Zil? Is this one jump capable? Uh-huh. Yes, right here, jump capable. It is. Okay. So, if the big one is jump capable, there is a strong possibility that the little one is too. Especially since they all use the same kind of drive system. Which, to be fair, let's see, where I thought it said so somewhere. I thought it said somewhere that it was comparable to the Minbari. Yeah, here we go, on the Zil class cruiser. So it says, this is standard of Vree ship measuring some 500 meters of diameter, powered by a quantum gravitic drive system, just a few steps behind those used by the Minbari. The Mark II saucer is one of the most powerful ships in the spaceways. It is a quantum gravitic reactor, and it says on here that the Vree Zor has a matter-antimatter reactor. So maybe we make the little one not jump capable, but the big one is? You know, different ship, newer ship, larger ship, more advanced technology. I'm actually okay with that one. I'm good with that. I'm good with that. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna make this one a no. Alright. Now I'm gonna go ahead and grab this as a format and paint it in here. It's not perfect because, technically speaking, that should be yellow, and down here this turret should be green. So this is the appropriate layout for a destroyer. But I don't think we're going to do it this way. And the reason I don't think we're going to do it this way is because of what the saucer is and what it does. Now, being a saucer, and I've thought about this one a while, it's round. And given that it's round, it's really, really hard to tell which way is necessarily forward? And I kind of wanted to lean into that one. So, what I was considering is it says that this, it has 6 pulsed ion cannons. And we're obviously not going to give it 6 pulsed ion cannons. Looking at the picture, and again, I know it's kind of cut off, it's got these 2 wings that come up the top, and it's got what look like double-barreled weapons. I wonder if I can just zoom in. Can I zoom in? Here we go. Hey, check that out. Look at what I just did. There we go. There's the Zor. Perfect. It's got these twin cannons on top, and that's like the only thing that's going to give you any indication of direction. Still, though, it says it has 6 pulsed ion cannons. I'm looking at this and I count 4. And even then, it's 4, and each one of them is twin-linked, so at best, I think we're talking about 2 cannons. Or at least 2 cannon arrays. So, what I think we're going to end up doing here... What I think we're going to end up doing here is I'm just going to go ahead and give it 2 cannons. Okay? They're ion cannons. I have no idea what ion means in our context still. However, it does not say... it doesn't say plasma, it doesn't say particle, it doesn't say pulse. So I don't think I need to make them plasma weapons. This means that I could just use lasers, I think. That might actually be a good rule of thumb going forward. If we just say, you know, if it says ion, use lasers. Maybe. So what does this do for us? For starters, I'm going to get rid of these port and starboard weapons. Okay, these are gone. They're just gone. Getting rid of those because this thing doesn't have side weapons. It either has forward weapons or it has turrets. Given that they are pointed forward, I'm inclined to give it both forward weapons. So I think we'll do that. We'll go ahead, we'll paint this one green. And we'll do it like this. And JP says 2 more on the bottom. You know, that was my first thought too, but, alright, come with me on this one. This is the only real picture that we have of the resourcers, and it's not great, but I'm not seeing anything on the bottom of them. Or if they are on the bottom, I can't tell. And we can clearly see them on the top. I don't see them. And they shouldn't be that hard to spot. But you know what? I'm inclined to go with that. I can do that. If we wanted to say that there's 2 more on the bottom, sure. And let's just assume they're fixed forward as well. So we'll go ahead and we'll load up the forward arc of this thing so that it will have the 3 forward weapons. That'll give us all 6 of them. And we're just going to turn them into laser cannons, I think. So, we'll come down here to the notes. We'll use the tech sheet, and we'll just say that pulsed ion cannons. Although it does say, actually it does say pulsed. Do I make them lasers then, or do I make them plasma? Pulses are usually plasma. I don't know. Okay, let me go back and take a look at the destroyer again. So the destroyer has, oh, 2 heavy forward mounts. One, or light on the port, starboard, aft, and turret. If I was to reduce that to 3 weapons, that would be 1 heavy and 2 light. I think I'll do that. I think I'll do that, actually. Okay, and JP says the bottom weapon is a dual cannon that fires in a cone downwards. You know, not to mention, I do seem to remember them doing that. Unfortunately for us, though, we don't have a 3rd dimension to fire down into, since we're playing on a tabletop. We have to play on a flat map instead of a 3-dimensional grid. So I'm just going to have to make it a forward weapon. It's either that or write a whole bunch of whole new rules. And I really don't want to do that. I really don't. Alright, pulsed ion cannon. Actually, hold on. I gotta differentiate these. Heavy pulsed ion cannon. And JP says, in the battle at Zaha Doom, they fired forward and then fired down as they passed over. I don't recall there being a Battle of Zaha Doom. There was the Battle of Sector 83, but I think that was just between the Vorlons and the Shadows, and then there was the Battle of Coriana 6, which is where we went like toe-to-toe with everybody. Alright, so heavy pulsed ion cannon. It says pulsed. I gotta make it a plasma cannon. So, plasma cannon. And then, light pulsed ion cannon will equal a light plasma cannon. There we go. I know a lot of these weapons are the same, but I can only do so much. And JP says, yes, the one with all the races. Yeah, that'd be the Battle of Coriana 6. And I do remember the Vree ships coming through and basically just raining firepower down from the underside of the saucer. Very cool, but very inconvenient for me. So I'm going to have to do what I can, and the best I can do is by giving it the heavy weapon forward. So, heavy pulsed ion cannon and light pulsed ion cannon. Alright, the rest of these are going to be the same. So, heavy plasma cannon is going to be the medium 5d12. Pulse cannon is going to be that. Copy that down there. And there we go. Perfect. I like it. As far as the rest of these go, those are going to be the same. So now I just got to get the numbers for all of this. So for starters, the destroyer is going to cost me 30 build points. Also, It's going to start with 150 HP. So we got that much. Now, just going to grab numbers. So thrusters, the L8s. Those are 100 power and 8 build points. Okay, we'll move down. The weapons. So a plasma cannon, it'll be under P. 30 and 20. Should have this one memorized by now. The light plasma cannons. There it is. 10 and 12. So that takes care of those, and then there's really nothing else left. The computer is free, the budget long. Sensors are 6. Sensors. Long. Budget. Yep, 6. Alright, and there's nothing else on this ship. There really isn't. So it does not carry any fighters. It doesn't carry any troops. It doesn't carry anything like that. It's just... that's it. There's nothing more to it. So, don't even need a calculator for this one. 30 plus 8 is 8. Plus 20 is going to be 58. Plus 24 is going to be 62. 82. Plus 6 is going to be 88. 88 build points. At least so far. We'll get to that in a moment. As far as power goes, 100 plus 30 plus 10 plus 10. It's going to be 150. Alright, we still need to get a power core, though. We need 150 power. Which actually should be a really good number. We should be able to get that, like, instantly. Power core. 150 for a large. An Arcus Ultra, right here. Perfect. Alright, and it says that Blizz has to go. Well, Blizz, I was glad to have you here. Thank you for coming, and I hope to see you next time. Until then, though, go ahead and take care. And JP says, if we can't have the vertical weapon attack, can it have the classic vertical tractor beam? Sure, why not? The problem is, like I said, we're playing on a two-dimensional surface. And so giving the ship a vertical attack doesn't work for us. The only way for you to actually use it, I guess, would be to turn it into a melee weapon. Why a melee weapon? Well, because it would have to assume that you're just over top of your target. You'd have to be occupying the same square. So it would be a range of 0. Now I can do that. Actually, now that I think about it, I can do that rather easily. There are range 0 weapons. Should we do that? I can do that. Hold on. So instead of medium range, we're simply going to make this 0. We'll make that 0. Ah, stupid Windows Explorer, now everything is screwed up. There we go. There's my chat. JP says, tractor beam for grabbing and flinging fighters. Or classic abduction scenarios, you leave the cows alone. Okay, you leave the cows alone. They did nothing wrong. Alright, so heavy pulsed ion cannon is now going to have a range of 0. Now, that sounds weird, right? Because if we're thinking about this, why would it be any shorter? Technically speaking, couldn't you just turn the saucer sideways and fire it that way? And in a three-dimensional environment, you'd be right. But again, we're not fighting in 3 dimensions. I'm limited by what I can do. So the range will end up just being 0. There, are you happy with yourself? You're not happy with yourself. I know you're not. Okay, so moving on. I need to add in the build points for this. So 88 plus 15 is going to be 93, 103. 103 build points. Okay. Now, what does that get us then? What tier is that? 103, 95 is a tier 3. Up to 115 is a tier 4. So it's going to be a tier 4 ship. Which, to be honest, is not bad. Tier 4, it's going to be 103,000 credits. And that does mean that it's going to get the first HP upgrade, so it's going to have the same hit points as the Drazi Sunhawk. I'll just copy that over. And I think that looks good. I think that looks really good. It's definitely unique. And it definitely seems a little awkward. But awkward is probably good in this case. The Vree are supposed to be weird. So yeah, I think this works. And I'm willing to leave it be. Alright, let's move on then, because it's almost, we're almost an hour in, and I still got one more ship to get done. So the next one is going to be the Vree Zill. And we'll see if we can pull up on that one. So, the Zill class cruiser. Let's go ahead and take a read. Manufactured by Merchant Adventurers Guild at Madrasi Orbital Facility. Don't care about that. And JP says, yep, sign me up for the Vree. I know you want Vree. It's going to be the weirdest goddamn table ever. I'm going to have one Vree. I'm going to have 3 kobolds in a Vorlon coat. I don't even know what I'm doing at this point. See, this is why most GMs tell their players what to do instead of letting them do what they want. Okay? Because players can't be trusted. And there's a weird spinny thing on this page. I have no idea why. Anyway, ignoring that. Okay. The Zill is a very fast, powerful, and would become more and more common sight in the years following the Second Shadow Wars. The Vree continue to expand their influence. The primary weapon is a cluster of 15 phased array antimatter cannons mounted on the vessel's ventral surface and normally used for a strafing run that unleashes a torrent of energy bolts that can easily rip apart a squadron of Vorlon or Shadow fighters. So they say, at least. Just because it happened on screen doesn't necessarily mean that's how it's going to work out on the tabletop. But when we're talking about, you know, the ship having the ventral weapons, this is the one that everyone was thinking about, not the Zor. Now, that's okay. I'm willing to allow that to be on the Zor. Because I think it's a good idea. After all, if the Zill is an upgraded Zor, then it stands to reason that what was really, really good on the Zill would have been tested on the Zor first. It says that it's a heavy cruiser, has a crew of 320, 1,500 troops in cryo drop frames. Jump capable, 15 phased array antimatter cannons, but we'll get to the data sheet on that later. So the Apocrypha is non-canon. We can't really use that for anything, and that's really all we've got. Yeah, that's really all we've got. So let's just go to the data sheet. Okay, this is the Zill class saucer. And I can zoom in a little bit to give everyone a good picture of that one. It looks cool. It's super cool. When you think like flying saucer, that's a flying saucer. So, super good. It says a heavy cruiser, 500 meters across, 1.3 million metric tons, crew of 320. Let's start writing some things down here. So, crew, 320. Now, as I said earlier, if all of our cruisers so far, which have been roughly in the market of about 1 kilometer long, if they've all been cruisers and a cruiser, or half the size of a cruiser is, 500, and that's large, I think we can make the Zill the smallest end of cruisers. So like the smallest cruiser, which means that I think we can make this one huge. Also, passengers. I'm gonna put none, because it says it carries 1,500 troops in cryo drop pods. Anybody, okay, I hate to put it this way, but anybody in cryo counts as cargo, not passengers. The reason being that they do not consume resources, they do not maintain systems, they don't do anything. There is no difference between a person in cryo and a crate. So, I'm going to go ahead and say passengers, none. The size, we're going to make it huge. It's going to be a cruiser. And as a cruiser, I can borrow from the Avioki and just put that there. Now, I may change my mind on the thrusters, because if it's got an advanced gravitic drive, maybe it should go a little bit faster. We'll have to wait and see what we can do with that. Armor, none. Armor class, 10 and 10. Damage threshold and critical. This I gotta go back for. Actually, no I don't, because I can grab that from here. I mean, I still gotta go back to find out what the, what it costs. But I can grab that. JP says, people aren't cargo, mate. Captain Jack Sparrow. That's true, however, I'm pretty sure that they didn't put the slaves in cryopods. Just saying. It's a little bit different. Alright, base frames. I still gotta go down here and get some stuff. Heavy hauler, bulk freighter, cruiser. Here we go, cruiser. Cruiser's gonna cost us 60. Let's mark that down. The base hit points for it are gonna be 180. Not 80, there's a 1 in front of that. The shields and armor, however, don't change, at least I think. Now, this is actually kind of interesting because both the Zor and the Zil-class saucers say under their defenses, they have armored hulls as well as electromagnetic and gravitic defense fields. Now that sounds almost like shields, but I don't recall seeing anything that really said they are. And for that matter, like even the Vorlons don't have shields. Vorlon ships have crystalline armor hulls that literally absorb incoming energy. They don't use force fields either. So I don't know if there's something else that we should be putting on here. And we can discuss that actually, because I do have like some very minor shields that I could put on. We'll look at that in a moment. We'll look at it in a moment. For the cruiser, for starters, obviously, when it comes to the weapons... Oh, also, jump capable? Yes, it is. Alright. Now, for a cruiser, being a huge ship, all of these slots are open to us. And it's going to get the same basic technology, which is going to cost us 6, not 60, just 6. There we go. And expansion space is going to be also 6. Okay. So that's all looking pretty good for now. So let's get into what the ship does, how it acts. There's nothing more on here. What about the actual data sheet? So it says it's the standard breeze starship measuring some 500 meters in diameter, powered by a quantum gravitic drive system, just a few steps behind those used by the Minbari. It is one of the most powerful ships in the spaceways. Yeah, I don't buy that for a moment. However, we may be able to do something about that. According to this, it has 15 antimatter burst cannons that I have to account for. And that's going to be rather difficult. Now, per the rules, this thing doesn't have any like obvious cannons. It just has like the one weapon on it. So, here's what we're going to do, I think. It says on here that heavy weapons can only be mounted on medium or larger starships. Capital weapons can be mounted only on huge or larger starships and cannot be mounted on turrets. That is kind of an enormous problem for us because I was originally going to put all our weapons on turrets. Still, though, there may be something we can do about this. If we can't use capital weapons, we can still use heavy weapons. And here's what I would like to do. So, we know that it only has the one weapon. This could really shape out in one of a couple of different ways. Number one is that we could make we could fill one Actually, no. Think about that. That would be a little bit wrong. Here's what we're going to do. I am going to do my best here to try and integrate 3D tactics into a 2D plane. This is going to get ugly. Because essentially, numerically, mechanically, it doesn't work. So I have to abstract it. I have to imagine that the combat for this is going to have to look something like a Cobra maneuver. Does anybody know what the Cobra maneuver is? It's a fighter jet maneuver. If you're not familiar with the Cobra jet maneuver, it's a specialist maneuver that only a few high-end fighter craft are capable of. It's actually kind of a signature of, I believe, 5th generation fighters and above. Although I think some 4th gen fighters might be able to do it too. But essentially, what the aircraft can do is that while traveling on a level plane, it can pop the nose up and bring itself almost vertical without losing altitude or gaining altitude for that matter. It can pop the nose up, turn vertical, stall, and then put the nose back down and continue in a forward path, all without leaving level. In order to integrate the three-dimensional physics here, I'm going to have to assume that that's how these V ships are going to operate, because there's no other way to do it. It's either that or I have to give it some kind of piloting check to make the weapons work, and that's just... it's not going to work. It's going to make the ship basically unusable. So what I can do is this. It says that they are, according to this, antimatter burst weapons. There is only one antimatter weapon that we have in the game, as far as I know, and it's a tracking weapon. It's right here, the Antimatter Mega Missile Launcher. We don't have any direct fire antimatter weapons. And so I'm kind of forced to interpret this. And JP says, just make it a turret. That was my original idea. My original idea was to just make it a turret so that it can fire in all directions. The problem with that is it kinda assumes perfect maneuverability. Because there's no difference between a ship with perfect maneuverability and a turret. A turret can fire in all directions at all times. Simple. A ship with perfect maneuverability can face in all directions at any... well, I should say at any direction at any time it wants. Obviously, when we're playing the game, during the helm phase, whoever is piloting the ship will have to choose a direction. So, a turret would assume something similar to perfect maneuverability, and the cruiser does not have it. The cruiser cannot have it. It has average maneuverability, and that's good. That's balanced. By fixing the weapons to one direction, we get to preserve the maneuverability aspect. Because it definitely needs to maneuver, given that the weapon is ventral. It has to maneuver to get it on point. Which is what brings me back to the whole Cobra maneuver thing. It's not... We have to change the way that we think about it in order to integrate the 3D physics with the 2D plane. And it's not pretty, okay? It's not pretty. But it's the only way for us to really make this work. Technically speaking, I could do this on the forward, port starboard, or aft. It doesn't matter. Because either way, the ship is going to have to maneuver to put that weapon on target. by putting it forward, we just mean that we're abstracting that they are maneuvering their ship in such a way that it is going to fire optimally. It's about the best way that I can explain it. So, what we can do is this. Remember how we were linking weapons before? What I'm going to do is I'm going to give them heavy weapons, and we're going to link all of them. It says it gets 15. I don't have slots for 15, but I can give it 4, and I can link all 4 of them to make it a truly terrifying weapon. And this is honestly the best I can do because this is a very complicated ship to build. The only problem is that I don't have antimatter weapons, which means that what am I going to use in place of them? And I just don't know. What is this? This heavy solar cannon. Heavy solar cannon. It says sustained 2. I've never used this weapon before. What does sustained mean? Special properties. Mind, mythical, numbing, orbital pod. JP says, yes, I like it. Glad you're on my team. Scatterbrains, smart, smoldering, spore, suspending, sustained. A weapon with this special property becomes more powerful with each successive round it strikes the target. After hitting an opposing starship, if the sustained weapon hits the same target in the subsequent round, it deals an additional die of damage for that hit. As long as the ship keeps hitting the target, it can continue increasing the damage dice for sustained weapons up to a maximum number of additional dice equal to the number listed in the special property. So, if I understand this correctly, the heavy solar cannon does 3d8 damage. If you manage to hit with it twice in a row, it would bump up to 4d8, and if you hit it again, it would bump up to 5d8. And JP says, point defense? No. It's a hunter's mark function. Yeah, kinda. I can kind of agree with that one. So, let's just think about this for a minute, because I'm already talking about linking them all into one weapon. If we gave this ship the heavy solar cannon, and if we gave it 4 of them, and if you managed to hit twice in a row, the first time you hit would be, with 4 of these, 12d8. The second time would be 16d8. And if you manage to do it again, it would maximize at 20d8 damage. That is a maximum of 160 damage in one shot, not counting everything you did prior to that. However, there is one other thing to consider. Remember how it said that they were all bound into a single array? And remember how during the Battle of Coriolis 5 it was firing a cone of shots? Well, array weapons are completely different. As a matter of fact, we did this for another weapon, I believe. We could use this laser array, the heavy laser array, which is short range. It only does 64, but again, if I were to add 4 of them and link them together, then that would give us a total of 24 D4s, which 24 D4 is an average of, hold on, 24 times 4 is going to be 96. Half of 96 is 48. Average damage for 24 D4s would be 56 damage, I believe. And as an array, it would do that to everything within the targeting area. PC says, for 3D combat, what about making the field 3 levels of hex grids with the ability to move up and down? Okay, your idea is really good. The problem is how to do it. See, on an actual tabletop, that would be nearly impossible. And I do say nearly because there are ways around that. You can't actually have 3 planes for tokens. What I have seen done is that in some games, they will go ahead and use elevators. So if you have like a model ship on a stand, there are either additional stand pieces you can use to elevate the ship up, or blocks that you can put under the stand to show different elevations. That's not really working for us. For our purposes, it would require us to actually start tracking altitude, which then becomes a huge headache, to be honest. It would mean that, and since since JP is here, JP is the pilot in the Star Trek game, it would mean that during the helm phase, you would have to not just determine who is or where you're moving on the grid, but also what level you're moving to. And that introduces all kinds of other knock-on problems, because now, how do I measure a ship firing 10 hexes? If it's firing 10 hexes, what if the ship is firing a direct fire weapon from 10 hexes at elevation 3 versus elevation 1? Because diagonals technically measure differently. I don't know. I feel like it's a good idea, but I also feel like that it would introduce a lot of complication. And I'm just not sure if my players are ready for that level of complexity. I mean, we have to make sure that this is done in such a way that anybody can pick it up and play it. And picking up a tabletop game is already rather difficult. Adding in 3-dimensional physics is taking it another step further. And PC says to change levels for targeting, -2 to range. That sounds quick and clean, but is it accurate enough? I'm not sure. And so, like I said, it's very difficult. I'm going to stick with what I did before and just make these weapons fixed, and assume that when the pilot is maneuvering, they are putting their ship in a position where it can fire. And that's honestly the best way to do it, is to just make that assumption. Because we have to make a lot of assumptions already. Fortunately for me, you know what they say about assuming? It makes an ass out of you and me. Well, I was already an asshole, so. I'm good there. I will make all the assumptions that I need to. So I'm going to stick with that. The question then is, for the weapon on the Zill ship, are we going to go for like maximum power, or do we want to go for maximum effect? Maximum power is going to be better for the antimatter aspect of it and the fact that it like vaporizes Vorlon and Shadow Fighters. But if we do not give it the array, it can only target one thing at a time. If we give it the array, we're going to be taking away from the power, but if we link a whole bunch of them, it'll still be a terrifying weapon. And JP says it becomes true to submarine warfare. Babylon 5 definitely represents 3D battles. To a limited degree. To a very, very limited degree. It shows them as three-dimensional. However, we do not often see them really exploiting the third dimension. If you look at pretty much every single battle scene in Babylon 5, every single one of them is invariably done across a two-dimensional plane, usually the equatorial plane. Which is fine. This is done for a variety of reasons. Number one, because it makes it a lot easier to film. And number two, just because spherical combat really tends to break down really fast. Once the battle devolves into a furball, you're right. The third dimension gets added in, and pretty much all strategy goes out the window. But by and large, everything is done two-dimensionally. But getting back to the weapon here, as much as I really do love the solar cannon, I really do, I'm thinking I want to go with the array. I think the array is the best way to go. Because at 24 D4s, the damage output of that is going to be not just consistent, but it's going to be really, really high. I mean, if we compare that to everything else around here, so the Sky Serpent is an interceptor, and it's only got 12 hit points, or no, it's got 30 hit points. Depending on what you roll with the array weapon, you could wipe out a whole squadron of those. I think that's the way to go. Not to mention that being fixed forward, it's going to leave the ship very vulnerable from pretty much every single other aspect. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to come down here to notes. Need a drink real quick. Okay, better now. We're gonna say these are antimatter burst cannons. Antimatter burst cannon equals heavy laser array. PC says, I agree with JP. There are a lot of scenes where they show ships diving on a target. They do, but it's important to remember, or to keep in mind, rather, what is shown cinematically may not reflect what's actually happening tactically. And let me give an example. There are multiple times where we see fighter craft at various different elevations. So Star Furies are going to fly over, they're going to fly under and around the Babylon 5 station. technically speaking, that's an elevation change. Practically speaking, though, from a tactical point and from a mechanical point, we are still operating on the same level 2D plane. We have elevation differences, but at no point are we actually changing the axis of the battlefield. And that's where the where 3D combat usually gets really interesting and also really complex. Because when you change the axis, it opens up other ships to be vulnerable in different ways. Now, when it comes to like fighters diving on a target, yes, they do that sometimes. But then immediately after, we also resort to the 2D plane again. It always comes back to that. And again, we go back to the idea that if I actually tried to introduce a third dimension, it's going to make it so much harder to track. It's not going to be fun. I don't disagree, though. I do not disagree. I think you're right. And PC says, but for the hexes, it's simple. Just imagine the planes 3 on top of each other and then rotate a hex into a vertical orientation and use it as a spacer for the planes. Again, I get what you're saying. And I could really... hold on. I actually have, right here, I have a grid. It's not a hex grid, but I have a grid. Let me zoom in. I could... If I come over here, I need my premium assets. I want sci-fi decor. No, here we go. Transportation sensations. Spaceships. 2. I have spaceships 2, but I don't have spaceships 1. All right, let me grab a couple of ships here. Here's a ship. And let me grab another ship. Here's another ship. Okay. So we got 2 ships here. We've got a large ship over here. Oh, I gotta bring that down a little bit. We've got a large ship here. And we've got a huge ship here. Now, one of the things that we could do, okay? One of the things that we could do here. And PC says, I vaguely remember that moving at a diagonal like that increases the distance at 1.5, so 2 is a good rounder. Yeah, kinda, sorta. Depends on the system. What I could do here is that I have like these three numbers up here. And I think that I can make these visible. Yeah, player permissions. C, and C. Okay. Bar 2. Okay, this just wants to, it doesn't give me a custom there. Anyway, save the settings. So what I can do here is I can say that this ship right here, the red one can be, it's hit points, so we'll give it 150 hit points. And the blue, that can be shield points. We'll give it 50 or 20 shield points. Sure, why not? And the green one, we can call this one elevation. So I could say that this one is currently at elevation 0. This ship over here. I want this visible to everyone, I think. I don't know, I never had to try and make these always visible before. Save? Still not always visible. Okay, anyway. 200. And 0. And 50. There we go. All right, so We got one ship here. And we got one ship over here. And they're moving towards each other. So one of the things that we could do is I could say that this ship is going to try and move overhead. And so it's going to move 4 spaces. Moves 4 spaces forward. And it's going to elevate by 1. Okay, we could do that. And then I could say that this ship is also going to move forward by 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And also elevate by 1. This is a way that I could do 3-dimensional combat. And I could make it so that a ship... We can make it so that the ship requires a certain amount of movement to move up and down between fields. I could also make it so that a ship can only interact with another ship on the same plane. We could then make a special rule for the Vree weapons that they can only interact with a ship that is underneath them. PC says, my thoughts on combat are to encourage plane use is a risk-reward thing, as well as reducing range, add a penalty to armor when defending from another plane. That would assume that our armor is, like, not complete. And by the way, it's a really good thing you brought that up, because if we look at our sheets here, we have shields and armor. And we have shield totals and ablative armor totals for forward, port, starboard, and aft. We have that for shields. We have forward, port, starboard, and aft as well for ablative armor. We do not have we do not have armor values or shield values for dorsal and ventral, because it was just never expected to be in the game, because the original designers did not want to track 3-dimensional combat. And I think they were really smart to not do that. I think that 3-dimensional combat is just a bridge too far. This is pushing it. Having the multiple levels and then saying that a Vree ship must be one elevation over another to do that, this is pushing it. Now there is one rule that might work for us, but you're not going to like it. So let me go ahead and I need to go to rules. I need to go to Starship Combat and stunts. Where are they at? Here we go. Okay, so under stunts, we have something called a flyby attack. Now, per the flyby attack, the ship moves as normal, but it can move through one hex occupied by an enemy without provoking a free attack, as described by moving through other starships. During the following gunnery phase, you can select one arc of your starship's weapons to fire at the enemy vessel as if the vessel were in close range. Treat the range as 1 hex. Against any one quadrant of the enemy starship. So, again, we already have kind of integrated 3D physics here by saying that you are allowed to attack any quadrant you want because you're either going over them or under them. But we're not saying over and under, just that you are going through and that the opportunity exists. Now, one way that we could actually make this work is that the weapon for the Vree, we could make it a flyby weapon. So we could use the flyby rule that we already have, because it already says, it says, did it say right here? Yeah. So it says a 15 phased array antimatter cannons mounted on the vessel's ventral surface and is normally used for strafing runs. Well, a strafing run would be a flyby attack. So if we were to go ahead and put this down, and let's just say that this is an array, but also a strafing weapon. Well, that's a bit tough because, well, no, actually that would work well. That would basically make it god tier at destroying entire enemy squadrons. Because if it's a strafing weapon and it's an array weapon, if it manages to strafe a squadron, it gets an attack against every ship inside of it. It could wipe out an entire squadron in one shot. Which, to be fair, is what we kind of see it doing. I'm inclined to do that. I think that might be our solution. I do think that might be our solution here. So, what if we came over here to the Zill? And we just go ahead and, instead of this being nothing, we'll call it a flyby. Okay, it's a flyby weapon. So when we come over here and we look at this one, we can say that this is the, what's it called? Antimatter burst cannon. So antimatter burst cannon. That's a long one. If we're going to make it into an array, let me grab the array. Where was it? Heavy laser array. It's right here. Okay. So it is short, but then again, a flyby is always going to be short. And it's going to be 6d4. And then down here, we will put array and flyby. Array and flyby. And then we'll have to make an actual rule down here. Because this does not exist anywhere in Starfinder. So, flyby. This weapon only fires during a flyby stunt. And I can copy that over here like this. And I think we've got it. And so if I copy all of these down here... Oh, and one more thing. No, not that one. This one. Okay, now I need to copy this. Okay, so what we have now here is a linked array of weapons that only work during a flyby attack. However, because they are all linked, when this weapon fires during a flyby, it is going to fire for 24d4 damage. What does that look like? If we come back here, that looks like this. 48 damage. Perfectly average. Well, perfectly middle, I suppose. Actually, that's a little bit below average. Because, technically speaking, if the maximum is 96, but we also have to subtract 24, that basically makes it, let's see, 26 minus 4, or 24, is going to be 76, 72. Half of 72 is 36. So, plus 24. Yeah, it's a little bit below average. So, I believe this will be an absolutely terrifying weapon. I think that it's going to be very difficult to use. But I also think that's part of the flavor. I mean, the Vree are not a major power in the galaxy. Their technology is either going to be subpar, or it's going to be just not quite there. We already know that their engineering is top-notch. But perhaps part of the reason why their technology or their power is so limited is just because of their doctrine. It doesn't work. They have these great weapons, and then they point them in like one direction that's really hard to use. So I think this will work. I need to get these numbers, though. So it costs 15 and 10. Now, the antimatter burst cannons linked. Linking weapons. I need the additional rules on weapons. Here we go, full rules. JP says they'll be fun to play. It'll be different. It'll definitely be different because everybody else is going to have... You mentioned somewhere up there, where was it in the chat? Scrolling. There it is. You mentioned broadside in space. Okay? And that is going to be true for pretty much everybody else. You're going to have fighters that are going to be chasing each other around. You're going to have capital ships that are going to be slugging it out between each other. And then you have the Vree. And the Vree are going to operate by getting in close, which is going to really hurt a lot of their weapons. Once you get in close, you'll be able to avoid certain arcs of fire, and you'll just be able to rake them as you go by. It will give them a very interesting doctrine, and again, this kind of goes back to why are they not a major power in the galaxy? Well, if their entire offensive doctrine is fly over top of them and drop bombs, how many of their ships survive long enough to get that close? That's the real question there, I think. Okay. So, getting back to weapons rules, linking. If you install two of the same direct fire weapons in the same arc, you can link them together. This costs a number of build points equal to half the cost of the weapons rounded down. Right, that's what I thought. So, that means that each one will cost 15. So, it's 15. And is it both weapons or just the one? I think it's just the one. Yeah, it's just the one. So, that'll be 15. There we go. And so that takes care of our big array, the antimatter burst cannon. And I think this is the cleanest way we're going to get it. Okay, I think this is the cleanest way we're going to get it. Everything else, though, looks good. So, I think we're ready to crunch some numbers. Oh, right, I was going to look at thrusters first, because they have better engines than most people Is there a better thruster that we can give them? Especially because, like, if we're going to do this, we can give them H10 thrusters. We're going to do that. We're going to do that. There's still no bonus on it, so I feel good about doing that. We're not helping them, we're not hindering them, but we are making them faster, and we're going to have to make them faster if we want them to be able to use this weapon, because they need to be able to get that flyby attack. That's going to be harder with the cruiser because they have to cross through the same hex as somebody else. So really, they need, this is non-negotiable, okay? They need to win that initiative roll every single turn. They need their opponent to move first so that they know where they're going to be and they can plan accordingly. And they need both of those to line up so that they can get the flyby attack and actually use their weapon, because if they can't flyby, they can't fire. If they lose the initiative roll, they get outmaneuvered. If the other ship is not within reach, they get outmaneuvered. This is going to be difficult. But the upside is that if everything comes into play, if they win the initiative, if they get the positioning, they can rain down hell on other ships to the point where the other ships are going to say, oh my god, what do we do? This is actually going to make it a little bit better for us, because originally I wanted to use that solar cannon with the sustained fire. That would not work here. The odds that you would be able to actually benefit from the sustained fire on flyby attacks are basically none. But with this, so long as you can do the flyby, you can annihilate everything under you. If it's a capital ship, you get to pepper that entire capital ship with your array of burst cannons. If you come across a squadron of fighters, you can erase that squadron from existence. Incredibly dangerous, but incredibly difficult to use. So let's figure out what this is going to cost us. The H-10s are going to use 160 power and 10 PCU. So let's do some totals. Power first. 160. Oh, and I never looked at shields. Do they deserve shields? They kind of do, actually. Before we do that... So there are two types of shields. And... like I said, according to this, they have electromagnetic or gravitic defense fields. I don't think anyone had that. Let me check the Minbari. So the Charlene-class warcruiser defenses are 10-meter reinforced polycrystalline armor, tractor beams, stealth devices, and a gravitic shield grid. No, I'm not giving them shields. I didn't give it to the Minbari. I'm not giving it to the Vree. I'm not doing it. I understand that it's in there, but I got to be fair. I got to be fair. If I'm not going to give it, if I give it to the Vree, I have to give it to the Minbari too. And I never saw in any battle that there were any kind of flashy shields around the Minbari ships, and I never noticed it make a difference. So, no shields. I'm not doing it. If somebody can make an argument for me to go back and give the Minbari shields, I will give the Vree shields. But you're going to have to make it a really good argument. For now, though, I'm just going to keep going. 160 plus 15 times 4 is 60, so that's going to be 220. and that's it. 220 PCU. Okay. As far as the power core goes... Nope, not here. Here we go. So for the power cores, we have 220. That means that the Arcus maximum is out. We're going to need a pulse orange at 250. And PC says, you're assuming that these shields operate in the visual range. I am making that assumption. Kinda, sorta, partially. There are also other explanations. What Babylon 5 calls shields could also be the equivalent of what Star Trek would call a structural integrity field, where they use energy fields to reinforce material strength. That's also an option. That would also be basically invisible. But I can't prove it. Now, I want to get into one other thing, because we do actually see shields once. Exactly once. And I wonder if I can find it real quick. Because other races, here we go. Hold on. Other races, here we go. We see shields one other time, and that is with the Third Space aliens. Now, this was only in the movie Third Space, and let's be honest, the canonicity of this movie is debatable. It was a fun movie. It was also a canned episode. There's literally nothing that happened here that had any effect of the series or was affected by anything really in the series. We do know, however, that they have energy field defenses. And let's see. What can I find about this? It says the Third Space Capital ships were massive intimidating vessels that were equipped with powerful energy shields. Their shields were powerful enough to absorb hits and strikes from a Star Fury pulse discharge cannon. That's not that much. It remains unknown and unclear as to what types of formidable weapons the Third Space Capital ships were armed with, and it remains to be seen. These ships, however, could be destroyed by thermonuclear weapons. You know, assuming that you got through the shields. As far as the fighters go, we had the Third Space Fighters. Because of course we did. There it is. There it is, my little guy. There it is, my little guy. Isn't he cute? Okay, they have shields too, though. So, it says that they were semi-sentient, unmanned, multi-role fighter craft whose primary function is to serve the Third Space aliens' own vast extinction armada as vanguards, defensive security, and scouts. As part of their vast and invincible armada, these ships are quite capable of equaling a White Star in firepower. They are small, yet larger than the Star Fury, and almost the same size as a White Star-class vessel, fast and armed with deadly weapons and defenses unlike anything ever seen. Star Furies could do practically nothing against them, and as quoted in the movie by one of the Star Fury pilots, we have to hit them 4 times before they even notice. There is plenty of proof to that statement as well. The weapon systems were based around the 3-coil tentacle-like appendages that generated a surprisingly powerful flame-like plasma energy burst, capable of crippling or completely destroying a White Star in just 2 shots and destroying Star Furies in like it was nothing but a bug on a windshield. So these ships had shields, they were incredibly powerful, And we're also not playing with them because I'm not revisiting third space. At least I don't plan to. Point being, they had shields, and so did the third space gate for that matter. That's why they had to get inside the shield and nuke it. None of the other shields that anybody else has come close to that. And so that's why I'm inclined to just say no. Maybe they exist, maybe they don't, maybe they have some influence. Even if I did, okay, even if I did, the only thing that I would be giving them, is I would be going down to the deflector shields and giving them a basic deflector shield 1, which is just a 1-point damage reduction to any incoming damage. Thematically, pretty accurate, because nobody has really solid shields. But is it significant? I don't think so. It does give them additional armor class and target locking bonuses, but I just kind of don't want to. I think we're going to have to go ahead and just leave this one alone. Again, unless somebody wants to make the argument. And the fact that it's invisible, I just don't think makes the argument. And PC said they may be absorbing the energy into a lower energy level. This is turning energy into something like radio waves. Yeah, what you're talking about is just dampening. It's a dampening field. And that's fine. That's basically just damage reduction, like I was pointing out with the deflector shields. I could, but I have no reason to prove that they have that, aside from what's written on here. There's no visual evidence of it. I will think about it. I will think about it. I wonder, does the White Star supposedly have it too? ISA... White Star... Oh, that's right, I forgot. They didn't put anything on the White Star page. My bad! Why would I expect there to be something there? The Wiki, Minbari Federation, League, Interstellar Alliance, White Star. Defenses. Magnetic discharge beams and a Vorlon defense system. The Vorlon defense system is basically just energy diffusing plating. Like I said, I will think about it. I'm conflicted on this one. I want to, but I don't want to. Okay? I do want to, but I don't want to. So we're just going to have to deal with that. Okay, as for build points, because I'm almost out of time. 60 and 10 is 70. 25 is going to be 95. 315s is 45. 95 and 45 is going to be 140. 150. 156. I cannot type today. Okay, so we're sitting at 156 build points. What does that look like? 156 build points is going to put it just over a tier 6. So it's going to be a tier 7. Which I think is really cool, actually. Because, if I remember correctly, the Sunhawk is a tier 7 Drazi ship, and the Avioki is a tier 8 Brakiri ship. Overall, I think it's in good company. I think it's in really good company. It is going to get a single bonus to its HP. That's 205 and 205. Yeah. And I think that's good. So this is definitely one of the more unique ships that we've done. Depending on how how I determine what we're going to do with the shields, it may become more unique. But simply having this ship with this absolutely massive array of weapons on the bottom that it has to do a flyby attack just to use, I think this is going to be a fun one. I think it's going to be incredibly difficult, and I wouldn't want to use it. But it's there, it's available. I think it's going to be good. So we'll leave it off here. I'll have to rename the stream because we never did get into hyperspace rules. That took a lot longer than I expected it to. So when we get back next time, ships are done. Okay, ships are done, which means that we're done with the largest part of this. We still need to do hyperspace rules. Once we get done with hyperspace rules, I need to work on telepaths. That's going to be interesting. And then after that, I think we're more or less done with Babylon 5. Are we more or less done with Babylon 5? Let me double check the overview that we did. So we did races. We did the Babylon 5 station. We did ships. Next is hyperspace, and then telepaths. Yeah, we're done after that. So we could finish this up within a month, maybe? I don't know, give or take. So, if you've enjoyed this so far, and if you're not still, or if you're not already completely angry with me for not giving them shields, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, that way you get notified every time these videos come out. If you know somebody else who's also into Babylon 5 or Starfinder, then share this video with them. Otherwise though, if you like me, you like what I'm doing, if you still like me, leave a like on the video, leave a comment down below, but if you're going to leave a comment down below, please, I'm asking, okay? I don't ask for much, but I'm asking. Please join the Discord. Come play with us. We currently have a Star Trek game going. There's still some play left in that one if you want to join Star Trek. We're currently setting up a Warhammer 40k Gene Stealer game. And there's this one. Once Babylon 5 is done, you can come play that one with us too. So please, come play with us. I want to see you there. And if not there, I hope I see you back here next week for more Babylon 5. And until then, take care.